We drop money in overcrowded places of the streets to trap people. Once you pick, you have sold yourself to us, and we'll be rejoicing with our leaders at our court, which is located at a place I can't mention. 10 things will happen to the picker or the victim, which I'll tell you. We have agents in Cape Town, Pretoria, Johannesburg, Messina, all over South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Botswana, and many other developing countries. As soon as you buy with the money, you'll be taken by a yellow viewers. Welcome once again to another educative show of African Confessions HD right here on Extraordinary Africa. This is a must-watch confession. Hear what they are doing now. They are trapping people with money. Oh, unbelievable. This is a must-watch confession. As soon as you finished watching, share with your friends and family. Let's dive deeper into the confession. I was born in a luxury life. My father was a wealthy businessman, owning properties and investments all over the city. We lived in a large house with servants, and I never wanted for anything. My mother was loving, and the two of them were happy together, or so it seemed. Growing up, I had everything a child could dream of: new clothes, toys, the best food. My father was always busy with work, but he took time to spend with us on the weekends. My mother, however, was the glue that held our family together. She was the one who cared for me, taught me values, and made our family a house, a home. I couldn't imagine life without her. But things changed when my father made a terrible mistake. He married another woman. My stepmother, who seemed charming at first, quickly revealed a darker side. Rumors spread that she dabbled in juju, witchcraft. My mother noticed it first. She would speak of strange things happening around the house, but my father dismissed it. Not long after the second marriage, my mother grew ill. It started as a simple cold, but soon she was bedridden, weak, and barely able to speak. The doctors couldn't explain what was wrong, and her condition worsened. I could see the fear in her eyes, though she never told me what she believed was happening. One morning she was gone. My heart broke into pieces that day. I was too young to fully understand, but I knew something wasn't right. My father mourned her loss, but it wasn't long before he shifted his attention to his new wife. The woman who had quietly taken over our home after my mother's death now ruled everything. Within months, my father started acting strange too. He became distant and sickly, just like my mother had. His business started to crumble, and he spent less time at home. The house was no longer a place of warmth and joy, but a cold, lifeless shell. Then it happened: my father passed away suddenly. The doctors said it was stress or heart failure, but I knew it was more than that. My stepmother, with their cold smile and dark energy, took over everything. She sold our houses, our cars, and all my father's assets. She kept the money and left me with nothing. I was only a teenager when I found myself on the streets with no family and no one to turn to. My stepmother didn't care about me. She threw me out like trash. I wandered the streets, hungry and lost, sleeping wherever I could find a shelter. I dug through bins for food and begged for space change. The once privileged life which I used to have was now gone, replaced by the harsh reality of survival. People who once greeted me with respect now looked at me with pity or disgust. I was invisible. Every day was a strange and a struggle. I had no hope and no future. The world had forgotten me, and I had no one to turn to. One evening, while searching for food in the city, I noticed something strange. There was a large stack of cash lying on the ground just ahead of me. It was unusual to see money like that just out in the open like that. My instincts told me to walk away, but desperation got the better of me. Without thinking, I picked it up. As soon as the money was in my hands, something felt wrong. I felt something, a sense of dread filled my chest. Before I knew it, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the city anymore. I found myself in a cold, dimly lit place. The shadows seemed alive, and the walls echoed with whispers. Fear took hold of me, but it was too late. I had fallen into the trap of the Dark Kingdom. The Dark Kingdom was a place of nightmares. It wasn't just a physical location, but a realm of darkness where lost souls are drawn in and trapped. I, now one of them, the rulers of the Dark Kingdom, are powerful beings controlling those who had lured into their world. They told me I had been mugged when I picked up the money. It was bait set by agents of the kingdom to capture souls like mine. I was now bound to save them, with no way of escaping. At first, I fought against it. I wanted to go back to my old life, but the more I resisted, the more the darkness consumed me. I realized there was no escape and I had to accept my fate. They trained me, taught me the ways of the Dark Kingdom, and turned me into one of their agents. As an agent of the Dark Kingdom, my role was simple and is simple: trap others. Just as I had been trapped, I was given stacks of money, and my job was to leave them in busy areas of towns and cities. We preyed on the desperate, the greedy, and the lost. Those who picked up the money, like I had, would be drawn into the Dark Kingdom, their souls enslaved. Each time I placed the money, I felt a twinge of guilty. I knew what awaited the people who took it, but over time I became numb to it. I had no choice but to follow orders. The kingdoms thrived on the souls it captured, and I was just a cog in the machine. I saw many lives ruined, people from all walks of life drawn in by the promise of wealth, only to find themselves trapped in darkness. Some were people, good people, others were not such, but in the end, it didn't matter. Once they picked up the money, their fate was sealed. I've been struggling with this solution, uncle. I've been struggling. When I broke free from the Dark Kingdom, thought I'd escaped for good, because there is this Sangoma who tried to help me, but I was wrong. The kingdom's grip wasn't so easily broken, and the shadows continued to hurt me. One night, after walking through the streets, tired and confused, I blacked out. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in a place I never thought I would be again: the cemetery. I was lying on cold, hard ground, and the air around me was very noisy. As I sat up and looked around, I realized where I was. I was at my mother's grave. Her name was carved into the stone, weathered and worn, but still visible. My heart sank. It had been years since I'd last visited her grave. The sight of her name brought a flood of memories rushed back. The warmth of her smile, her gentle touch, and the way she always made me feel safe. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky and weak. How had I ended up here? I had no memory of walking to the cemetery, no recollection of lying down on my mother's grave. The last thing I remembered was wandering the streets, lost in thought. It was as if the Dark Kingdom had pulled me back, trying to remind me that I couldn't escape them so easily. The shadows around me seem to move, shifting in corners of my vision. I feel their presence even though I could I couldn't see them clearly. They whisper, their voices like cold breeze brushing against my skin. You can't leave us, they seemed to say. You belong to us. I shook my head, trying to clear my mind, but the shadows were relentless. I had freed myself from their direct control, but they hadn't given up on me. They wanted me back. They want me to continue their work, to keep trapping souls for the dark kingdom. Standing on my mother's grave, I felt an overwhelming sense of guilty. I had failed here. She had been taken from me, and I had fallen in the same dark path that had led to her death. I kneeled down, placing my hand on the cold stone of her grave, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry." I didn't expect a response, but in that moment, I felt a presence that I hadn't felt in years. Solution Uncle will write a book about my story. My story is very long. To every listener who feel that I have used much of your time, please forgive me. I'm in trouble. I need your help as soon as possible. My brother, a life of wealth. He was born into a life of privilege and wealth. But even in times of plenty, the Bible reminds us not to place our trust in material riches. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to 21, Jesus teaches, "Do not store up from yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break and steal, but store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also there." Focus on God's external provision rather than earthly wealth. This passage encourages seeking spiritual wealth which lasts forever rather than being too attached to material possessions. I hope we are together, my brother. The betrayal by your father's second wife, leading to the death of both your parents, mirrors the way evil enters our lives through deception. This is a time when trust in God's justice becomes essential. Psalms chapter 34, verse 18 offers comfort. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. When you face loss and betrayal, turn to God for healing. Trust that He sees your pain and promises to heal your heart even in the face of injustice. I hope we are together. You have experienced abandonment and poverty, which reflects a state of being forsaken by the world. However, God never abandons His children. In Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6, God promises, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." My brother, even when you are when abandoned by people, know that God is always present. You can find hope in His promises that you always provide and never leave you alone. Trust in His provision and comfort as He is ultimate Father to the fatherless. In your description, you picked up the money and became trapped by the dark kingdom. This reflects how temptation can lead us into spiritual bondage. James chapter 1, verse 14 to 15 warns us. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire, he is convinced, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Temptation is a universal struggle, but God provides a way out in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. You had a life of wealthy, everything you wanted in your life. You were trapped. You become an agent helping to trap others, but the Bible warns us against leading others into sin. In Matthew chapter 18, verse 6, Jesus says, "If anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for them to have a heavy stone tied to their neck and be thrown in the sea." It's never too late to stop doing a wrong and turn back to God. He can forgive any sin if ask Him and turn away from it. And my brother, there's this thing you need to know. God can change your heart and give you the strength to do good. Even after you have done wrong, He gives you new life and hope through His faith. To fight spiritual battles, we need God's armor: truth, faith, righteousness, and prayer. God helps us fight and win over darkness if we trust Him. Bible also teaches us. You are saying you are waking up on your mother's grave. Waking up on your mother's grave was a sign that you were still hearted by the past. But God tells us not to fear death. In Romans chapter 8, verse 38, 39, it says, "Nothing, not even death, can escape us from the love of God." Even in the darkest places, God's love is with you. You can trust Him to protect and guide you no matter what happens. When darkness tries to pull you back, resist it by staying close to God. The devil has no power over you when you are in God's care. You said you talked with your mother, right? Your mother's memory can remind you that you are not alone. The faith of others can give you strength to keep moving forward. And you said you have a struggle to move on. God gives you strength to keep going, and even when the struggle is hard, keep hoping in Him, and He will help you rise above your others. Fighting age. Ask God to help you when you feel weak. He promises to give you strength and show you a way to resist the edge or fall back into old habits. You are seeking for redemption. You can't change the past, but through Jesus, you made new. Trust in His forgiveness and live in the new life He gives. A lot has been happening outside there, listeners, and we need to be very careful. People are doing strange things outside there. Let's teach our children to know that there's Jesus Christ. You should pray before sleeping, before meeting new people, before relocating because of work. You need to put God first because the devil is at work. He has various techniques at the moment.